next.
We are just learning Nebraska's athletic director is moving on.
A source close to the athletic department tells 6 News Alberts has sent a letter to his staff saying he is leaving. 6 Sports Director Grace Boyles joins us live in the studio with the latest.
A chaotic and unexpected start to a Wednesday in March. It was first reported this morning that Nebraska Athletic Director Trev Alberts was being targeted by Texas A&M to become the Aggies' new AD. Now it's true. The news comes just 8 months after Alberts signed a contract extension with Nebraska until 2031. While Alberts' departure from Lincoln may come as a shock, it should be no surprise that other top universities were trying to hire Alberts. In his almost 3 years as athletic director at Nebraska, the former Husker All-American linebacker hired Matt Rule to lead the football program. The Huskers signed the highest-ranked football recruit in program history. Nebraska volleyball played in front of a record-setting 92,000 people, and both men's and women's basketball about to be in the NCAA tournament. That's just the beginning. Here's Alberts back in November talking about the job.
I feel incredibly honored to get to be at the University of Nebraska. I think I'm not naive to these shifting dynamics in college athletics, and I honestly don't believe that there's a better athletic director job in the country.
We'll continue to keep you updated on the latest developments coming out of Lincoln and now College Station. John, Aaron.
Grace will dive deeper now into the contract Trev Alberts signed with Nebraska in November. The deal was to keep him on as athletic director through 2031. And the agreement had Alberts earning $2.1 million by 2026, making him one of the highest paid ADs in the country. With Alberts leaving now, he will owe the university more than $4 million for breaking his contract. He will also miss out on retention bonuses from Nebraska, including $3 million for staying through 2031.
Now, Alberts' departure comes as the university prepares for an overhaul of their most iconic venue.
A $450 million proposal has been approved to improve Memorial Stadium. The project has been largely led by Alberts, and the plan includes destroying the south side of the stadium and replacing it with chair-backed general seating. Major construction set to begin next year, and Alberts previously said it gives them time to start fundraising for the project.